ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to today's show. And all right, we've had the theme song that we have for quite a long time. I think we may change it up, but I don't know. We've had two throughout our time here today. That's what we got. So anyway, we have two great stories for you in the final 18 minutes of our, or not 18, but that is how many minutes we have left. We, in fact, have 12 minutes left in our show, so we're going to do 6 by 6, I think. We'll try. Yeah, but American courts treat Muslims differently. That's the unfortunate thing a new study says. Among perpetrators of ideology-motivated violent plots, those who perceived to be Muslim received sentences that were 4 times longer than non-Muslims involved in similar cases. This disproportionality carried over into the court of public opinion. Case attempted violence by Muslims received 7.5 times more coverage from major media outlets, while successful plots were covered twice as much. So these cases, attempts of violence, were covered by Muslims were covered 7.5 times more. So these findings are contained in a new report by the Washington-based Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, or ISPU, Social Policy and Understanding. This is what it's called. These findings are the report. If you want to check it out, is called "Equal Treatment: Measuring the Legal and Media Responses to Ideologically Motivated Violence in the United States." It's built on years of research on cases of planned or successfully executed acts of ideological violence in the U.S. The report highlights the glaring discrepancies in the way the judicial system and the media treat such acts, depending on the background of the suspected perpetrator. So the findings of this report build and expand on the existing research, provide quantitative backing to many people's extinct perceptions of what has been going on in the media and in our legal system. Kumar Rao, a fellow at ISPU and one of the co-authors of the report, says, as it relates to acts of ideological violence, there is frankly a double standard how perpetrators are described in the media as well as how they're treated in the courts. That's what he said. So, yeah, it's pretty much, and one of the most important things here is the court of public opinion. It's all about, not that these people will ever live normal lives again, but if it's attempted violence and they didn't do it, it'll be hyped up so much, and it just makes so much sense. So it is, so if you compare, this, it really is quite amazing, but it's like something you always kind of imagine would happen. If living through it, you always kind of imagine, hey, the white guy doesn't get nearly as much coverage during a terror attack than the Muslim dude does. Let me think about that. And then there is this graph here that says it quite clearly, and it's 230 months is the average sentence sought for a perceived Muslim perpetrator. So 230 months. That's the average sentence just for a perceived Muslim perpetrator. Then the average sentence issued is 211 months. So that it goes down a little bit. That's good. So still way more than the white guys who get average sentence of 76 months and average sentence issued 53. So it's really quite amazing. The sentences were on average 3 times the length for Category A, which is perceived Muslim perpetrators, versus Category B, which is perceived non-Muslim perpetrators, with the sentences being issued 4 times the length for Category A compared to Category B. So it's 4 times, 53 versus 211. So yeah, roughly 4 times there. The report draws on public databases that compile information on acts of ideological violence attempted or carried out during the U.S. Between 2002 and 2015, including Intercept's Trial and Terror database, which tracks the prosecution of cases involving international terrorism. Among these cases were numerous bomb plots, plots to attack government buildings, attempts to stockpile assault rifles for the purpose of carrying out attacks against civilians, and complete attacks led to 2 or more fatalities. The researchers did a media analysis of the completed attacks, but did not do illegal analysis, as those incidents often led to the death of the perpetrator. So, yeah, the media analysis were often covered, but soon the perpetrator was often found dead, so it didn't really matter how he was treated in the court, because it was kind of hard for him to have a trial, believe it or not. Anyway, the researchers used 7 different variables to control the severity of the crime in cases comparing perceived Muslims and non-Muslim perpetrators, including whether the plots resulted in fatalities, utilized deadly weapons, or involved co-perpetrators. For the purpose of analysis, the report refers to individuals perceived to be Muslim by their description of their motives in law enforcement statements and the media. When comparing similar cases in terms of intent and harm, the researchers found staggering disparities in the way cases were treated in the courts. In cases involving Muslim defendants, the study found that the prosecutors sought 3 times longer sentences than they did in comparable cases involving non-Muslim defendants, seeking an average of 230 months in prison compared to 76 months. Upon conviction, the sentences that Muslim defendants received were on average 211 months long, and we did go, in fact, over this already. So, as we know, so law enforcement also used very different tactics in cases covering Muslims and non-Muslim perpetrators. In 2/3 of convicted plots involving Muslims, and I apologize, I am kind of reading a lot here, that's because the details are all very numerous and very important. In 2/3 of convicted plots involving Muslims, the means to actually commit a crime, such as explosives or weaponry, were in fact provided by undercover informants acting on behalf of the government. But only roughly 16% of investigations involving non-Muslim perpetrators use this counter tactic, which critics have blamed for effectively manufacturing criminal conspiracies in many cases. So they pretty much would have the government kind of watch out for the Muslim guys who are trying to commit terror. And, like, for example, I believe it was, like, something similar happened, and I could totally be wrong about this because I haven't really been following it, in the trial of Omar Mateen's wife, who was the pole shooter, that they had something similar going on with that. So, so that is just something very it's kind of one of those things that you always kind of really knew what was happening, but you didn't know it was that bad, and you didn't know what actually happened, pretty much. So, how it's covered is very interesting. I recommend you check. It's very much worth your time that you check out that full article. So anyway, now we take you to Turner, Oregon. It's a quaint conservative town on the outskirts of Salem, Oregon. It is a village that, by the margin of 2-1, supported Trump over Hillary in 2016. In 2014, when a referendum on legalizing marijuana throughout Oregon came before the people of the town, they rejected it handily, with 57% voting no. It passed statewide anyway, and in 2016, the people of Turner were again asked to vote on weed. This time, the question was to allow recreational marijuana businesses in their community. To nobody's surprise, they voted overwhelmingly 63% to prohibit the business in unincorporated parts of the county. But everyone's surprised, the town voted 51% in favor of allowing pot businesses within the city limits. So they pretty much allowed 51%. It snuck by that they allowed pot businesses in their city limits. So they let it in. And Gary Tiffin said that we were, quote, actually shocked. They were actually shocked, which is pretty funny. So the town's collective spit take was well-founded. They had screwed up, and an in-depth analysis of local option marijuana votes by Oregon persuasively suggests that Turner legalized the marijuana business by mistake as a result of 2 confusing worded questions appearing on the bottom of a ballot. Saga of marijuana in Turner, Oregon is a prime example of both the benefits and limits of direct democracy. So the process started in 2014. At the time, despite strong public support for marijuana legalization, local politicians in Oregon, like the rest in the country, were reluctant to embrace the reform. Maybe just the D.C. bubble, or whatever, or maybe just because they were too scared to. Don't really know. So organizations use ballots to initiatives to bypass state legislators and put the issue directly to the public. On the macro level, the system worked as intended. The voters got what they wanted, even when there representatives refuse to represent them. So it's kind of nice that we have referendums on everything. That's actually pretty cool. I like that we have that. But I personally, I say more referendums the better. I mean, direct democracy is becoming, in my idea, in a weird way, almost a better and better and better idea. Because so many times our representatives refuse to represent us, which is pretty sad. So, after the public approved Measure 91 in Oregon, legalizing marijuana across the state, the legislature enacted a new rule for local regulation, a compromise of sorts. In most places, if a city or county wanted to locally prohibit the recreational marijuana business, they turn to put that ban on the next general election ballots. They need to put that ban on the next general election ballots. Now, the problem in turn was that people don't always pay close attention to questions on local issues that appear on the bottom of the ballot. So, as a result of the legislature modification, 6 counties and 54 cities in Oregon voted on marijuana bans, creating a large set of data to study. So the results from all these local elections that on recreational marijuana don't seem to suffer from a not in my backyard problem, nor does it benefit a yes in my backyard mentality. So besides a few localities which had unusual results due to unique circumstances for the most part, most communities voted on statewide marijuana legalization. We know that, how they voted on statewide marijuana legalization. In 2014, matched very closely with